I'm 31, and I finally cut the cord. Not in a dramatic, slam the door kind of way. Mine was quieter, strategic, like slipping out of a prison cell without triggering the alarms. My name's Lucas, just a regular guy who thought being the responsible one in the family meant something. But responsibility became shackles. And it took me over 7 years to realize I wasn't being helpful, I was being used. It all blew up 2 months ago during a family meeting that felt more like a sentencing hearing. My parents, Dean and Marla, sat across from me with stiff faces. My older sister, Brielle, barely looked up from her phone. My father cleared his throat, like he was about to deliver a TED Talk instead of a financial ambush. "We're increasing your rent to $1,100 a month," he said flatly. "It's only fair. You've got a good job now." "That job? I'm a software engineer. I work long hours, pull weekend sprints, and was making decent money enough to be comfortable. Not enough to be a human wallet for 4 people. But why now?" I asked, pretending not to know the answer. Brielle had just moved back in with her 2-year-old twins and her new boyfriend, Craig, jobless, entitled, and somehow allergic to taking out the trash. My rent hike was their golden ticket to continue living rent-free. My mother gave me a soft smile. "Lucas, you're the stable one. They need time to get back on their feet." Right. Because Craig's daily TikTok rants about grind culture were definitely signs of future ambition. That conversation? That was it for me. The final click of the lock on a door I hadn't even realized was closed. I smiled, nodded, and said, "I'll think about it." But I wasn't thinking, I was planning. Let me rewind a bit. After I graduated, I moved back in to save money for 6 months. That 6 months stretched into 7 years. At first, I didn't mind. Rent was cheap, $400 for my old bedroom, which came with a peeling Harry Potter poster I hadn't bothered to take down. I paid utilities, covered groceries sometimes, and helped with the Wi-Fi. And then Brielle lost her job at the spa. Then she got pregnant. Then she moved in. Then she got pregnant again. And Craig? He came as part of the package. Loud, jobless, and perpetually working on a music career from the couch, using my laptop. Guess who funded their Uber Eats and Apple subscriptions? Me. Guess who paid to get the water heater fixed when Craig accidentally broke it, trying to install a custom showerhead? Also me. And every time I raised a concern, it was met with guilt-trippy lines like, "You know how hard it is to raise kids," or "You're lucky you don't have that kind of stress." Apparently being the only one working full-time, sleeping with noise-canceling headphones, and hiding my cereal boxes from Craig's midnight munchies was easy living. My parents justified it all by pointing to my income. "You're not struggling," my dad would say, like that meant I should carry everyone else. But what stung wasn't the money. It was the casual entitlement. My tech gear was used without asking. My room became the overflow playroom. My desk chair disappeared one day. I found it in the living room with peanut butter stains. No apology. The worst was my name being tied to everything, the utilities, the internet, even the Netflix account. They never asked. They just assumed. Because family shares. Unless it's Brielle, then family receives. A year ago, I tried to have an honest talk with my mom. I told her I was starting to feel overwhelmed, like I couldn't breathe financially. She touched my hand and said, "Lucas, you're so generous. Don't let money make you bitter." It was always like that, twisting my concerns into flaws. If I said no, I was selfish. If I asked for boundaries, I was cold. If I locked my door, I was shutting them out. They were right. I was shutting them out, emotionally at least. After the rent hike bombshell, I acted normal. I made dinner, laughed at Craig's recycled dad jokes, even helped Brielle with a late-night diaper disaster. But every spare moment, I was laying bricks for my escape. First move, a secret bank account. Second move, a PO box. Third, scouring apartment listings. I found a 1-bedroom downtown, small, but bright and quiet. Best part? No toddlers screaming through Zoom calls. No Craig borrowing my gaming headset. Every morning, I left the house with a backpack, claiming I was going to Starbucks to work. I wasn't. I was moving my things piece by piece. My hard drives, my guitars, the few collectibles that hadn't been broken or borrowed. I gave myself 2 weeks. The day before the move, I bought donuts for everyone, smiled, laughed. My mom even said, "It's so nice when you're in a good mood." I wanted to scream. Instead, I waited until they were all out Brielle at a kid's birthday party, my parents running errands, Craig God knows where, and I executed the plan. Movers came. I took only what was mine. Left a note with the house key taped to it. "I've moved out. Please don't contact me for money. I wish you well, but I need my life back." Lucas, that night, I sat in my new apartment, legs hanging off the edge of the couch, surrounded by boxes and quiet. Actual quiet. No crying kids. No Craig yelling at his Xbox. No passive-aggressive lectures from my dad about family obligations. I opened a beer, took a long sip, and cried not from sadness, but relief. I had escaped. But the aftermath? That was only just beginning. I thought the silence would last longer. Barely 12 hours after I left, my inbox started lighting up like a Christmas tree. My mom's first message was simple: "Lucas, what is this? Call me immediately." I didn't. She followed up with a voice note that sounded like she'd just walked into a crime scene. "Lucas, this isn't funny. Your dad is furious. You took the TV and the Wi-Fi router? What were you thinking?" I didn't respond. Instead, I made coffee in my new kitchen, the one I could actually walk through without stepping on toy cars or empty juice boxes. I sat on my small balcony and let the sun hit my face while my phone vibrated nonstop. That evening, the tone shifted. The messages from my dad rolled in blunt, angry all caps. "Grow up. This is immature. You don't walk away from family. Don't think you're coming back when things go south." And then the guilt trip began. My mom wrote, "We didn't raise you to be this cold. Brielle is devastated. The kids miss you." The kids. Right. The same kids who ripped the keys off my mechanical keyboard and flushed my earbuds down the toilet. I cared about them. I really did. But that didn't mean I had to destroy myself, trying to be the glue holding their chaotic lives together. By day 3, they'd run out of new things to say. That's when Craig entered the chat. He sent me a long, whiny message on Instagram, because I'd already blocked his number. "Hey bro, not cool. You left us hanging. The internet's down, and Brielle can't stream her yoga classes. Kids are freaking out without their cartoons. Also, I can't find the AirPods. Did you take those?" The audacity was almost impressive. I didn't reply to him either. I was too busy reconnecting with myself, rediscovering things I'd forgotten I loved, playing music without interruptions, sleeping past 6 a.m., eating food that hadn't been mysteriously sampled from the fridge. But the storm didn't pass. On day 5, my mom showed up at my job. Let that sink in. My mother, at my office. She must have found the address on a piece of old mail or something. Luckily, I had warned my manager and front desk staff just in case. I'd told them a family situation might escalate. Still, I wasn't prepared for the look on her face when security turned her away. Through the glass doors, I saw her arguing with the receptionist. Her eyes were red. She was gripping her purse like it might fly away if she let go. She saw me standing there and mouthed something I couldn't make out. I walked back to my desk, my stomach tight with anxiety but also relief. That night, I got another email from my father. Short this time. "You've humiliated your mother. Hope you're proud." No mention of how I'd been drained for years. No reflection, just blame. But here's the thing about cutting ties with people who thrive on control. They don't just let go. They push harder. They panic. Because for the first time, they can't manipulate you with guilt, obligation, or expectations. I knew this was part of the process. That didn't make it easy. My therapist, yes, I started therapy, told me I was going through a type of grief. Not for a person, but for the version of my family I used to believe in. Because deep down, I had spent years hoping they'd change. Hoping they'd wake up one day and say, "We're proud of you. We appreciate everything you've done." Instead, they said, "You took the TV." By the end of the second week, my mom sent a carefully worded text. She had downgraded her tone to sad resignation. "We don't know how to pay the phone bill. Can you at least fix that? It's for emergencies. Think of the kids." I almost gave in. Almost. But then I remembered those kids weren't my responsibility. Neither was the phone plan, or the mortgage, or Craig's diet of $17 smoothies. So I sent a single message. The phone plan was under my name. I've removed myself. You'll need to set up your own. I never heard back. Not that week. Instead, I started getting messages from cousins, aunts, even a second uncle I hadn't seen since I was 13. The smear campaign had begun. Apparently, I had abandoned my family without warning, stolen property, and left Brielle and the kids in a dangerous situation. One cousin even called me a sociopath. I ignored the messages, except for one, Aunt Melissa. She'd always been neutral, quiet, the peacemaker. She reached out with concern, not accusations. Lucas, I don't know exactly what happened, but I can see you're hurting. If you ever want to talk, I'm here. No pressure. I cried reading that, not out of sadness, just sheer emotional release. It was the first message in weeks that didn't come with a demand. I called her the next day. We talked for over an hour. She told me that my parents were struggling financially and emotionally. They were behind on the mortgage. The utilities were shaky. Brielle and Craig were arguing constantly. But most importantly, she told me this: your parents never told the full story. When I asked why they relied so much on you, they got defensive. That says a lot. She was right. That third week in my new place, I started to feel the weight lift. I was sleeping better, laughing again, cooking actual meals instead of instant noodles eaten in silence, while someone's kid screamed bloody murder from the hallway. I even started dating again, nothing serious, just coffee and conversation. But it felt good to be seen as a person, not a wallet with legs. Meanwhile, back at the house, things were falling apart. A neighbor I used to chat with sent me a message on Facebook. Hey, not sure if it's my business, but your family's been having a lot of visitors lately. Looks like debt collectors. I thanked him and logged off. Let them feel the pressure. Let them sit with the consequences. Because here's the truth. When you're the one holding everything up, walking away looks cruel. But the real cruelty is expecting someone to carry a weight that was never theirs to begin with. I wasn't angry anymore. Just done. Done being the fixer. Done being the fallback plan. Done being the responsible one who's rewarded with more responsibility, while everyone else gets to be the mess. By the end of that month, I received one last message that actually made me pause. It was from Brielle, just 5 words. I think I get it now. Brielle's message, I think I get it now, sat in my inbox for 2 days before I replied. I wasn't sure if it was bait, another attempt to rope me back in, but something about the way it was worded felt different. No guilt trip, no passive-aggressive dig, just a sentence, raw and simple. So I wrote back, "What exactly do you get?" She replied almost instantly, a longer message this time. She talked about how everything at home had gone downhill fast, how mom was stressed and dad was snapping at everyone, how Craig had finally admitted he wasn't looking for work, just waiting for things to work out. She said the kids were confused, tired, constantly asking where Uncle Lucas had gone. I read it twice. Then again, part of me wanted to feel smug. I wanted to say, "Told you so," but I didn't. I just stared at the screen, feeling heavier than I expected. "They always said you were lucky," she wrote, "but I see now that what they really meant was, we can lean on Lucas because he won't say no." That line hit different, because she wasn't wrong. I used to think being the responsible one meant I was doing something right, but really it meant I was the easiest to take advantage of. The one who didn't make a scene. The one who always paid, apologized, or adapted. So they kept piling on, assuming I could handle it, until I couldn't. Brielle ended the message with something I didn't expect. "I'm sorry. For all of it, I didn't realize how deep it went until you weren't here to catch everything." That night, I sat in my apartment, just me, a bowl of pasta, and a soft jazz playlist in the background, and let the message sink in. I didn't cry, but I felt something shift inside. The wall I'd built wasn't crumbling, but it cracked just enough to let in a bit of light. The next few weeks, things got real messy. Aunt Melissa called again. This time, her voice was more serious. "Lucas, your parents they're not doing well, financially or otherwise. Apparently, the mortgage hadn't been paid in 2 months. Credit card bills were stacking up. My dad had tried applying for a loan, but the bank flagged irregularities in income reporting. The kind of irregularities that happen when someone's been padding their books with their son's paycheck for years. I should have felt bad. I didn't. They'd been playing house on my dime for nearly a decade. Now the lights were flickering and the rent was due in every sense of the word. Craig? He finally got a job, some overnight gig at a warehouse. Lasted 3 shifts before he injured his back and refused to go back. Brielle was losing it. She texted me again, asking how I'd budgeted so well back when I lived with them. You always seemed to make it work. I don't know how you did it. I didn't have the heart to tell her that half my income had been swallowed by their lifestyle. I gave her some budgeting tips anyway. Told her how I tracked every expense, how I used cash envelopes to avoid overspending. Gave her a link to a savings calculator. She thanked me and didn't ask for money. That part shocked me the most. Meanwhile, the messages from my parents had gone quiet. Not a word in weeks, no threats, no tears, just silence. Until a letter arrived. Not an email, a physical letter. Typed, formal, and almost lawyer-like in tone. It danced around the edges of an apology but never quite committed. They acknowledged I had made a choice that reflected personal boundaries. That things may have been handled in a way that caused stress, that they regret any misunderstanding or discomfort. I almost laughed. It was like reading a customer service email from someone who accidentally shipped you spoiled milk. At the bottom, a final line stood out. We hope, in time, we can rebuild our family connection. We'd like to meet for coffee. No mention of Brielle, no mention of the chaos at home. Just a vague hope for reconciliation and an invitation that felt less like healing and more like fishing for an olive branch. I didn't respond. Instead, I focused on work. My team had noticed a change in me. I was sharper, calmer even, happier. I got my first promotion since joining the company. My manager pulled me aside after a big release and said, "Whatever you're doing, keep doing it." I smiled. "I just cleared some distractions," I told him. Around the same time, I started seeing someone, Isla. We met at a coding workshop, both of us geeking out over clean UI design and complaining about clunky APIs. What started as casual coffee chats turned into dinners, movie nights, and eventually sleepovers. The first time she visited my place, she said, "It feels peaceful here." I looked around, sunlight filtering through the curtains, plants thriving by the window, shelves lined with books and vinyl, and said, "It finally is." But peace has a way of attracting chaos. A month after the letter, I got another message, this one from a number I didn't recognize. "Lucas, we're being evicted. Dad won't talk to the bank. Can we talk?" Brielle, that word evicted, sent a strange chill through me. Not because I was afraid, but because the storm I'd predicted was finally here. And I wasn't inside it. I called her. She sounded tired. Not dramatic, not emotional, just worn out. "We have 30 days. Dad's been pretending everything's fine, but the foreclosure notice came last week. They're panicking." "Where are the kids going?" I asked. "I don't know," she said quietly. "I've been looking for apartments, but it's hard with no job history and bad credit. Craig's no help. Have you asked Mom and Dad?" They're in denial. Still think they can talk their way out of it. I exhaled. "You have options. Look for assistance programs. Apply for housing vouchers. Lean on people who want to help, not people you have to guilt." There was a pause. Then she said, "I wish I'd seen all this sooner. I'm trying, Lucas. I really am. I believe you," I told her. And I did. But I also knew this wasn't my storm to clean up. After we hung up, I sat in the stillness again. No buzzing texts, no knocks at my door, just peace, hard-earned peace. Brielle was beginning to wake up. But our parents, they still hadn't changed. And now, the house built on my back was crumbling, brick by brick. 3 weeks after Brielle called about the eviction, I was still waiting for the other shoe to drop. I don't know what I expected. A dramatic family standoff on my doorstep? A group intervention with tissues and apologies? Maybe just silence. But it came in the form of something stranger and quieter. It was a Thursday evening. Rain was whispering against my windows. I'd just finished wrapping up some bug fixes for a mobile app project when there was a knock at my door. Soft, hesitant. I wasn't expecting anyone. I checked the peephole. My heart dropped a little. Brielle, alone. I opened the door slowly. She looked small. Not physically, she's taller than me, but there was a kind of shrinkage in her posture. She was soaked, holding a hoodie around her like a blanket. Her mascara smudged under both eyes. "I'm sorry," she said before I could even say hello. "I didn't know where else to go." I stepped aside. No words, just a silent invitation. She walked in slowly, eyes scanning the apartment like it was some alien world. It probably felt like one. Clean counters, soft light, calm air, no chaos, no noise. I handed her a towel. She sat on the edge of the couch, like it might reject her. "I'm not here to ask for money," she said quickly. "I swear," I nodded. "Okay." She took a shaky breath. "We're out. The house is gone. Locks changed yesterday." I sat beside her, letting the silence hold us both. "What about Mom and Dad?" I asked. She gave a hollow laugh. "Still pretending it's not happening." Dad yelled at the locksmith, said the bank would reverse it. Mom's packing boxes like we're moving into a vacation rental. I closed my eyes for a second. It was all unraveling, just like I knew it would. But it didn't feel satisfying. It felt inevitable, like watching a slow-motion train derail. After trying to warn the conductor 5 stops ago, Brielle continued, "Craig's living with a friend. The kids are with his cousin for a few days while I figure things out." "And you?" I asked. She looked down at her hands. "I've been staying at a friend's, but it's not a good situation. Too crowded, too many problems of its own." She looked up. "I just needed a place to breathe for a bit." I remembered what you said about leaning on people who actually want to help. I know I don't deserve that from you, but you were the only person who came to mind. The weight of those words hit me somewhere I didn't expect. For years, I begged that family to see me, to see the effort, the sacrifice, the slow erosion of my mental health and bank account. And now, here she was, finally seeing it, even if it came a little too late. I stood up and walked to the kitchen, made her some tea. Something warm, familiar. She cradled the mug like it was sacred. Her fingers trembled. "I applied for a receptionist job," she said, voice cracking. "Nothing fancy, but I want something steady, something real. I've been freeloading for so long, I forgot what standing on my own feels like." "That's a good start," I said, and I meant it. She stayed 2 nights, just long enough to rest, clear her head, and begin something that looked like self-respect. On the 3rd morning, she packed her things without being asked. "I'm going to stay with Aunt Melissa for a bit," she said. She offered. "I think she feels bad about how everyone treated you." I nodded. "She's good people." Before she left, she paused in the doorway. "Lucas, I wish I could undo it all. Not just the money, but the way we treated you. Like you owed us your life." I met her eyes. "You can't undo it, but you can stop it from repeating." She nodded once and walked out into the light. That night, I slept better than I had in weeks. But the peace didn't last long. A few days later, I got an email from my father. Subject line, "We need to talk, man to man." I almost deleted it on instinct, but curiosity got the better of me. He opened with pleasantries, which was weird, then moved into a vague explanation of how the economy had hit them hard, how unexpected circumstances had forced certain choices, and how families should stick together during hard times. Then came the kicker. "Your mother and I were wondering if we could stay with you temporarily until we get back on our feet. Just a few weeks. We won't be a burden." I laughed out loud. Not a joyful laugh, more like disbelief dressed in humor. They'd lost everything. And somehow, their solution was to knock on the same door. They'd slammed shut with guilt, debt, and entitlement. I didn't respond right away. I forwarded the email to my therapist and asked her what she thought. She called me instead of writing back. "Lucas," she said, "this is the test. What do you mean?" "You've made space, built boundaries, gained peace. This is the moment where you decide whether the new life you've created is real or temporary." She was right. If I let them in, even for a week, the cycle would start again. Guilt, pressure, manipulation disguised as gratitude. I knew it, and they knew it too. So I wrote a short reply. "I'm sorry. That's not possible. I hope you find a solution that works for you, but I cannot offer housing or financial help. I wish you both the best." Simple, firm, no loopholes. I didn't expect a thank you, but the reply I got surprised me. "Wow, so much for family. Guess all those years we spent raising you meant nothing." There it was. Not even a full sentence before they turned it into a guilt trap. I didn't respond. Not then. Not now. The next day, Aunt Melissa called. "Just so you know," she said, "your parents are staying with your cousin Trent. For now. For now, I repeated. Let's hope he's got good boundaries, she sighed. They still don't see it, Lucas. They're telling people you abandoned them for a selfish bachelor lifestyle. I smiled at that. That selfish lifestyle includes 8-hour sleep cycles and no toddlers breaking my laptop. She chuckled. Can't argue with that. A week passed. Then came the moment I didn't know I was waiting for. I got a message from Craig, just 3 words. You ruined everything. I didn't even open the rest. I blocked him and moved on. Because here's the truth. They never wanted to admit I didn't ruin anything. I stopped playing the part that was keeping their house of cards from collapsing. They did the rest, all on their own. Craig's "you ruined everything" message didn't sting the way it might have a year ago. I just stared at it, eyes dry, heart still. Back then, I probably would have gone into a tailspin, explaining myself, overthinking every word, trying to fix something I didn't break. But now I understood something so many people learn the hard way. Some people don't want help. They want a crutch. And when you stand up, they fall and blame you for standing. I blocked the number and deleted the message. That day, I went for a walk. No music, no distractions. Just me, the hum of city traffic in the background, and the faint chirp of birds that somehow still existed between office buildings. There's something about walking that helps you hear your own thoughts more clearly. I found myself thinking about legacy not in some dramatic Shakespearean way, just what kind of person I wanted to be remembered as, and what kind of stories I wanted to stop passing down. Because I'd grown up thinking sacrifice meant love, that if you really cared about someone, you should stretch yourself until your back broke, and then offer your spine as a seat cushion. But what no one told me was that healthy love includes space, boundaries, mutual effort. Without that, it's just servitude dressed in sentiment. That weekend, I got another letter. Not from my parents, from my cousin Tyler, the one who had always kept quiet at family gatherings, but saw more than he let on. It was handwritten, on plain white paper. Hey Lucas, I know things have been crazy. I've heard a lot of stories, some of them ridiculous, but I just wanted you to know, I believe you. I always noticed how much you did, how quiet you were. It's only now that everyone's struggling that they realize what you were holding together. I'm not taking sides. I just want you to know someone saw it. And I'm proud of you for walking away. I didn't expect it, but I cried. Not the loud, sobbing kind. Just silent tears that snuck up on me while I read those words over and over again. Someone saw me. Someone had seen all along. It meant more than any apology my parents had never given. That same week, I bumped into Isla again. We hadn't spoken in a while. Life had taken us in separate directions. But seeing her was like finding an old book you loved and forgot to finish. We got coffee, talked about everything. Work, family, therapy, growth. She listened, really listened. And when I told her what had happened, she didn't pity me. She respected me. You didn't just escape, she said. You broke a cycle. That takes guts most people don't have. And I guess that's when it hit me. I wasn't just someone who moved out. I was someone who refused to keep the dysfunction alive. Someone who said, this ends here, and meant it. The next day, I visited Aunt Melissa. She greeted me at the door like I was family again. Not the ATM version, just me. Brielle was there too, playing with her kids on the carpet. The older one, Max, saw me and ran up with a big grin. Uncle Lucas. He hugged my legs like nothing had ever changed. Like he hadn't watched me disappear from his life for months. Brielle looked up and smiled. A real one. Tired, but genuine. We sat down while the kids played. I'm interviewing next week, she said. A receptionist job at a dentist's office. Benefits and everything. That's awesome, I told her. She nodded. I don't want to be her, Mom. I don't want my kids to grow up thinking love is about guilt. I saw myself in her then. Not the part of me that left, but the version that could have stayed forever. If I hadn't woken up, she was still walking through her storm, but at least she had her eyes open now. We talked for a while longer, light, easy things. Then she reached into her bag and handed me an envelope. What's this? Just open it. Inside was a check, not a huge one, but bigger than I expected. I looked at her, confused. I know it doesn't even come close, she said, but I'm going to keep paying you back. bit by bit. For what I can, anyway. You don't have to, I want to, she interrupted. Not because I feel guilty, but because it's right. You gave everything without asking. Now I want to give something back without being told. I didn't argue. I just nodded and tucked it into my jacket. It wasn't about the money. It was about respect. Later that night, I got home and stood in the middle of my apartment, just stood there, surrounded by the peace I built with my own hands. For the first time, it didn't feel like I was hiding from something. It felt like I had come home to myself. That's when I saw the voicemail. From my mom. She hadn't called since I said no. I played it on speaker, setting my phone on the table. Lucas, I don't even know if you'll listen to this. Your father and I, we've been talking. A lot, actually. Things aren't good. I won't sugarcoat it. We lost the house. Most of our savings, too. And your father, well, he's been quieter than I've ever seen him. Not angry, just lost. I know we did a lot wrong. I know we used you, took you for granted. I don't even know if sorry is enough. But I wanted you to know, I get it now. You weren't being selfish. You were trying to survive. And we made that impossible. I won't ask for anything. Just, maybe one day we can sit down, no expectations, just talk. For a few minutes after the message ended, I just sat there. I didn't cry. I didn't call back. I just sat in that silence, the kind that wasn't empty anymore, but full of something honest, something earned. Because here's the thing, no one tells you. When you finally break free from being the family's safety net, it's not just about escape. It's about reclaiming your life, your time, your energy, your voice. It's about no longer measuring your worth by how much you can carry for everyone else. And slowly, people either adjust or fall away. Brielle adjusted. Isla understood. Tyler supported. Aunt Melissa held space. And my parents? Well, they're learning. Maybe too late. Maybe not. Either way, I'm not holding the weight anymore. I'm building something lighter, something real. And that, more than anything, is the legacy I want to leave behind. Weeks passed, then a month. The voicemail from my mother stayed on my phone, untouched. I never deleted it. I didn't replay it either. It just sat there like a folded letter from a past life. I wasn't angry anymore, not like before. The burn had cooled into something softer, more like sadness with edges. But I didn't rush to call back. I didn't owe anyone that. One afternoon, I met Isla again. We were sitting in the park, our drinks sweating on the bench between us. The sun was strong but kind. It was the kind of day that made even city noise sound like background music. "You're somewhere else," she said gently. I nodded. Just thinking about everything. You don't have to finish the story the way anyone expects you to. I looked at her. "You can end it with peace," she said. Not forgiveness, not revenge, just peace. She wasn't trying to push me one way or another. That's what I liked about her. She left space. Space for thought, space for silence, space for choice. That night, I lit a candle and sat with myself. I thought about my childhood, the nights I stayed up, studying while my parents watched Brielle's dance recitals, the report cards that earned a nod instead of a smile, the quiet belief I carried that if I just kept doing the right thing, I'd finally earn their pride. I thought about all the ways I'd twisted myself into someone useful. And then I thought about the man I'd become on my own terms. I had peace now, boundaries, freedom, and a small but growing circle of people who saw me not what I could provide. So I decided. I wrote one final message to my parents. No call, no visit, just a clear line in ink. "Mom and Dad, I heard your message, and I believe you're trying. But trying doesn't erase what's been done. And it doesn't mean I have to rebuild something I spent years escaping. I'm not angry. I'm not bitter. But I am done carrying what isn't mine. If we're going to have a relationship moving forward, it has to be honest, respectful, and mutual. That means no more asking for financial help, no more guilt trips, no more rewriting history. I'm open to occasional calls, maybe a coffee down the line. But it starts with boundaries. If those are crossed, I walk away for good. This isn't punishment, it's protection. For me. For the life I've finally built, Lucas, I didn't expect a reply. And none came, not right away. Instead, life continued. And for the first time, it was mine. My apartment became home in the truest sense. Not just a space, but a reflection of who I was becoming. Plants I actually kept alive. A desk that held nothing but my own things. Shelves full of books I'd never had time to read when I was always cleaning up someone else's mess. Work got better too. I wasn't constantly drained, showing up half alive to meetings. I had energy again. I started mentoring a few junior developers, finding joy in giving without being bled dry. One evening, I got dinner with Brielle, just the two of us. She looked lighter, tired, but real. She talked about her new job, how hard it was juggling childcare and office work, but also how proud she felt signing her own lease. "You know," she said, stirring her iced tea, "I don't think I ever really saw you before." I raised an eyebrow. "I saw what you did, not who you were." I smiled a little. "That's more than most people ever get." She leaned in. "I'm sorry. And not in that vague family drama way. I mean it. You were the only reason that house didn't fall apart years ago. I just didn't want to admit it. It was easier to pretend you were the lucky one. I used to think I was," I said. "Now I just think I got out." Later that night, she texted me a picture of Max drawing stick figures of the family. One of them was labeled Uncle L. He had a laptop and a cape. I didn't expect the lump in my throat, but there it was. 2 weeks later, I got a short email from my dad. "Lucas, we got your letter. We read it more than once. I won't lie and say it was easy to read, but it was fair. Maybe overdue. We're trying to adjust. It's not easy at our age, starting over. But we understand. You don't owe us anything. I hope one day we can earn back a conversation. Until then, take care." Dad, I read it 3 times. It wasn't a warm hug, but it wasn't a slap either. It was something human. And honestly, that was enough. I printed it, not to frame it or keep it forever. Just to remind myself that sometimes walking away isn't about punishment, it's about clarity. And sometimes clarity echoes back, even if it takes time. It's been 6 months now since I left that house. Sometimes I pass by the old neighborhood. I see kids riding scooters down the sidewalk, dogs barking through fences, front lawns scattered with life. Their house? Different now. New owners. A fresh coat of paint. The porch swing I installed is still there, still creaky, and I don't feel bitterness. I don't feel loss. I just feel distance, the healthy kind. I went home once, not to visit, just to stand across the street for a moment. I wasn't spying or reminiscing. I was witnessing closure. And in that moment, I whispered something to myself, quiet, firm. I made it out. Not just out of a house, but out of a cycle, out of a story that always cast me as the caretaker, the responsible one, the savior. Now I'm just Lucas, not an ATM, not a crutch, not a background character in someone else's life. Just a man who chose peace over performance, boundaries over burnout, self-respect over obligation. And maybe, just maybe, that's the real legacy I leave behind. One built on truth, not tradition. Story 2, we cannot be evicted. We are your parents. After getting an eviction notice, my dad spit. I remained steadfast. I met the sheriff at the residence 2 weeks later. I never thought that at 8:30 a.m., I would be standing in my driveway on a Thursday morning as my parents were being loaded into a rented U-Haul truck under the supervision of Sheriff Martinez. My father's face was a mask of barely restrained anger, and my mother's eyes were red and swollen from sobbing. Both refused to give me a direct glance. This scenario was definitely added to the communal gossip mill as the neighbors peered in from behind curtains. Legally evicting my own parents should have made me feel bad, devastated, or at the very least, conflicted. Rather, I was overcome with relief and bitterly satisfied that I had finally been able to defend myself. I never would have thought I could do this 3 months ago. However, I didn't realize that I wasn't a daughter to them. I was simply a walking ATM until I heard them joking that I was their personal bank. This is how I, Rita, a 32-year-old woman, finally ended a lifetime of being taken advantage of financially and emotionally by those who were meant to care about me the most. Though never quite enough, money was a constant topic of conversation in the home where I grew up. Although they lived beyond their means and considered saving as an optional activity, my parents were impoverished. In the meantime, I was the responsible, industrious kid who, Starting at age 16, worked weekends at the neighborhood supermarket while keeping my GPA at 4. Working 3 part-time jobs to help pay for my scholarships, I became the first person in our family to graduate from college. I got an entry-level job at a financial technology business in Seattle after I graduated. The beginning pay wasn't great, but I saved money every month, lived frugally, and shared an apartment with 2 roommates. In the meantime, when another dad's automobile broke down, my parents had a financial crisis. Mom needed dental work that her insurance did not cover. During a particularly harsh winter, their roof began to leak. They always asked me for assistance since I was their dependable daughter, and she was doing so well. I didn't mind at first. After all, these were my parents, the individuals who had brought me up, who had sacrificed for me as a child, or so I thought at the time. Every request was accompanied by hefty doses of guilt when I hesitated, but the promises of reimbursement never came to pass. With a tone full of disappointment, my mother would add, "After everything we've done for you, to provide you a wonderful life, we sacrificed a lot." I finally had some breathing room in my salary after working my way up to a senior analyst position by my late 20s. Knowing that the cost of real estate in Seattle would only rise, I had been saving hard for a down payment on a home. I paid $340,000 for a modest 3-bedroom home in Renton. I took advantage of the chance. Although it wasn't my ideal house, it was in a respectable neighborhood and in good shape. It was also an investment in my future, which is what matters most. My life was completely upended when my parents contacted 2 weeks after closing with some shocking news. Their flat was being evicted from them. Dad hadn't found a new job after losing his old one 6 months prior. They have no funds at all and nowhere to go. "Rita, where are your parents?" I had hardly heard my father's voice break as he spoke. If we had no other choice, we would never inquire. I offered them my investment property as a short-term fix, against my better judgment, and in spite of my 2 closest friends' cautions. They could remain in the house until they were able to support themselves, and I would keep renting my flat in the city, near their place of employment. We decided on 6 months, with the understanding that they would save for their own place and find employment during that time. 1 year spanned 6 months. 1 year turned into 2. Every time I brought up the topic of them moving out, I was met with guilt trips about family loyalty, health issues, or other excuses. Water is not as thick as blood. My mother adopted Rita as her motto. Family looks out for family. In the meantime, I was paying the $1,950 monthly mortgage, which covered utilities at an average of $380 per month, and taking care of all maintenance issues, such as the water heater breaking down, the furnace needing repairs, the gutters needing to be replaced, and the furnace, which cost $1,200 and $2,300. It all landed on me. Even worse, it appeared that my parents had completely given up on finding employment. At the age of 58, my father said he was too old to start over. Despite being a skilled electrician in an area with construction booming, my mother, 56, claimed her fibromyalgia made working impossible, though she somehow managed to garden for hours and attend weekly book club meetings. The financial drain was enormous, but the emotional toll was even greater. I delayed my own goals, including a master's degree I wanted to pursue, because I couldn't afford both tuition and supporting my parents. My dating life suffered. Explaining to potential partners that a significant portion of my income went to supporting my fully capable parents was not exactly attractive. The few times I brought serious boyfriends home, my parents behaved so entitled and embarrassed me so thoroughly that the relationships inevitably faltered. By year 3 of this arrangement, my resentment was building, but the chains of obligation and filial duty kept me trapped. That is, until a random Tuesday afternoon in April changed everything. I had taken a rare personal day from work to meet a plumber at the house. The garbage disposal had stopped working, and my parents were insisting it needed immediate attention. I had texted them that morning to confirm I'd be coming around 1 p.m. with the plumber. My mother had responded with a thumbs-up emoji. When I pulled into the driveway at 12:45, I noticed several unfamiliar cars parked outside. Strange, since my parents had claimed they would be out running errands until around 2 p.m. I used my key to enter and heard voices and laughter coming from the kitchen. I quietly approached, not wanting to interrupt what seemed to be some kind of gathering. That's when I heard my name. "Rita is so easy to manipulate," my mother was saying, her voice carrying clearly down the hallway. "All I have to do is mention how hard we worked to raise her, and she folds immediately." Laughter followed. I froze my hand on the wall, unable to move forward or retreat. "She's our personal ATM," my father chimed in. "The garbage disposal works fine. I just disconnected it yesterday because we needed her to pay for some other things this month." More laughter. A voice I didn't recognize asked, "Aren't you worried she'll figure it out eventually and kick you out? Please?" My mother scoffed. "She's too soft. Besides, we're her parents. Where would we go? She'd never have the spine to actually evict us. She'd die of guilt first. And by then," my father added, "she'll be too invested. This house will practically be ours anyway. She's unmarried, no kids. It'll all come back to us in the end. We're just enjoying the benefits early." The group erupted in laughter again. I don't remember backing away from the kitchen. I don't remember walking out the front door or getting into my car. The next thing I clearly recall is sitting in the parking lot of a Starbucks 3 miles away, my hands shaking so badly I couldn't lift the cup of coffee I'd apparently ordered. My phone buzzed with a text from my mother. "Where are you? I thought you were coming with a plumber." I turned off my phone and sat there for hours, replaying their words over and over in my mind. The casual cruelty, the calculated manipulation, the utter lack of respect or love in their voices. For the first time, I saw the situation with perfect clarity. I wasn't helping my parents through a difficult time. I was being systematically exploited by people who saw me as nothing more than a resource to drain everything. Every guilt trip, every emergency, every sad story had been orchestrated to keep their gravy train running. Something inside me hardened that day. The dutiful daughter, who had always put her parents' needs first, died in that Starbucks parking lot. In her place emerged someone new, someone who valued herself enough to say no more. The next morning, I called in sick to work and made 2 important appointments. One with a therapist who specialized in family trauma, and one with a real estate attorney. The therapist listened calmly as I poured out the whole sordid story, then said something that changed my perspective completely. "Rita, supporting your parents isn't your obligation, especially when they're taking advantage of you. Setting boundaries isn't selfish. It's necessary for your well-being." The attorney was equally direct. "Legally, they have no claim to your property. They've established no rental agreement, paid no rent, and contributed nothing to the mortgage or taxes. Washington state law requires a 60-day notice for eviction of month-to-month tenants, which is the closest legal category they fall into. We can have papers drawn up today." I spent the weekend in my apartment ignoring calls and texts from my parents, who were growing increasingly concerned about my unusual silence. I used the time to create a detailed spreadsheet of everything I had spent on them over the past 3 years. Mortgage payments, $70,200. Utilities, $13,680. Home repairs and maintenance, $9,450. Direct cash loans, $12,800. Groceries and miscellaneous expenses, $7,320. The grand total made me physically ill $113,450, more than enough for the master's degree. I put on hold enough for a substantial down payment on a place in the city closer to my job, enough to have changed the trajectory of my own life, sacrificed instead to fund my parents' voluntary unemployment and comfortable lifestyle. On Monday morning, I had the eviction notice ready. I drove to the house, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might break through my ribs. My parents were both home, lounging in the living room I had furnished, watching the large smart TV I had purchased last Christmas. "Rita," my mother exclaimed when I walked in. We were worried sick. "Why haven't you been answering our calls? And what happened with the plumber?" I placed the envelope on the coffee table between us. "This is a 60-day eviction notice. You have until June 20 honest to find other accommodations and move out of my property." The shock on their faces would have been comical under different circumstances. My father recovered first, his expression morphing from surprise to outrage. "What the hell is this? We cannot be evicted. We're your parents? Actually, I can. I'm the sole owner of this property, and you have no legal right to be here. I've been more than generous, allowing you to live here rent-free for 3 years. That arrangement is now terminated. My mother's eyes filled with tears. The same manipulative tears I'd fallen for countless times before. How could you do this to us? After everything we've sacrificed for you, where will we go? You should have thought about that before. You called me your personal ATM and laughed about manipulating me before you disconnected a working garbage disposal just to get more money out of me. I heard everything, Mom. Last Tuesday, you and Dad and your friends laughing about how I'd never have the spine to evict you. The color drained from both their faces. My father attempted to backpedal. You misunderstood, Rita. We were just joking around. You know how people talk. 60 days, I repeated, turning to leave. Not 1 day more. If you're not out by then, the sheriff will escort you out. My mother grabbed my arm, her fingers pressing it brutally. You ungrateful bitch, she snarled. All pretense of the loving mother gone. We gave you life, we reared you. You owe us. I looked her straight in the eyes, no longer scared of her judgment or displeasure. I owe you nothing, no more. I left with her shouts, chasing me out the door, calling me every awful thing she could think of in my car. I eventually broke down, crying till my throat was sore and my eyes burned. I was grieving, not for the loss of my connection with my parents, but for the reality that the relationship I believed we had never existed in the first place. The outcry was quick and furious. Within hours, my phone was swamped with messages from relatives I hardly spoke to, all expressing their astonishment and disgust at my behavior. My mother, sister, Aunt Paula phoned to inform me I was dead to the family for tossing my own parents out on the street. My father's brother left a message claiming he had never been more disappointed in someone in his life. The claims were all variants on the same topic. I was selfish, ruthless, harsh. Nobody made the effort to inquire about my side of the story. After years of encouragement, no one asked why I may have made such a significant change. My parents intensified their techniques since, in their opinion, they had the right to unrestricted access to my resources. In an obvious attempt to harm my professional image, my father phoned my place of employment and tried to talk to my manager about my mental health problems. After being sent to the emergency department for unexpected chest symptoms, my mother was discharged a few hours later with a diagnosis of worry. It was quite clear, see what you are doing to us. When I found out they had applied for credit cards in my name using personal information they had access to, while residing in my home, it was the most heartbreaking blow. They owed more than $15,000 in 3 different cards. I reported fraud and filed police reports, which made an already unpleasant situation much more awful. My parents tried a new tactic, denial. As the day of eviction drew near, they just pretended that there was no eviction notice. They packed nothing, made no attempt to find new lodgings, and carried on with their lives as though my ultimatum had been a passing whimsy with no lasting repercussions. 2 weeks before to the deadline, I paid them a visit to check on their progress on moving out. There were no evidence of packing or preparation, and the home was just as it had always been. No, we're not leaving. Calmly, my father told me. You'll have second thoughts. You always do. I showed up at the residence with Sheriff Martinez and 2 deputies on the morning of June 20 honest. We had told my parents when we would be coming to enforce the eviction, but they had yet to make any plans. They were still in their bathrobes and sipping coffee in the living room, as if it were any other day when we walked in. Did you really bring the cops? My mom inquired, astonished. Your own parents? Sheriff Martinez clarified that the purpose of these police is to carry out a valid eviction order. You have 2 hours to collect your personal necessities. The property will then be secured, and you won't be allowed to return without the owner's permission. The situation's truth just seemed to sink in at that point. As my father paced and frantically called family members, my mother started to sob. Nobody wanted to take them in. The reality? It was ultimately inevitable that they would have to confront the fact that their entitled behavior had caused them to alienate everyone in their life. What are we meant to do? My dad insisted. I gave him a list in print. These are the addresses of reasonably priced hotels for extended stays. You can afford a small flat with your combined Social Security income. You have 60 days to solve this problem. They ultimately leased a U-Haul and packed it full of their belongings while berating me the whole time. At last, a distant relative consented to temporarily house them in his basement. I felt a huge burden lifted off my shoulders as they drove off. I was able to breathe freely for the first time in years. The eviction's aftermath was both freeing and difficult. I had the house thoroughly cleaned and fixed within the first month. The property had not been treated well by my parents. Signs of neglect were everywhere, including holes in the walls and stains on the carpets. Restoring it to a rentable state came to around $8,000 in total. I got trustworthy renters through a property management business, including a young family who paid their first month's rent and deposit without any issues. Instead of supporting my parents' way of life, the property's consistent revenue was now used to create my future. I enrolled in the online master's degree I had put off for so long until the financial drain was finally closed. I reduced my 45-minute commute to 15 minutes by moving to a nicer flat near my place of employment. With the burden of parasite parents no longer to conceal or explain, I resumed dating. The therapist assisted me in overcoming the sadness and shame that still came up from time to time. She clarified, "You're grieving for the parents you deserve," during one really challenging session. Even if you're proud of yourself for establishing sound limits, it's acceptable to feel sad about that loss. My parents suddenly stopped calling and texting me 3 months after the eviction. According to a mutual acquaintance, they were able to coerce my father's sister into telling them a story about their ungrateful daughter who had deserted them when they needed her. Knowing that my aunt was their next target made me worry for a minute, but I had to remind myself that she was an adult and was making her own decisions, just as I had at last made mine. When my mother sent me the first conciliation SMS, I had just turned in my final projects for the first semester. "We miss you, Rita. We've been reflecting a lot on how our relationship went awry. Perhaps we could get together for coffee and discuss the situation. This kind of family separation is unacceptable." I didn't answer. My father tried a week later. "Without your assistance, your mother and I are having difficulties. Given our restricted income, Aunt Debbie's request for us to help with rent and utilities seems unreasonable. We are related. We ought to help one another. Could we please have another conversation?" I didn't participate. As weeks went by, the messages persisted and became more urgent. It was evident from reading between the lines that my parents were searching for their next host and that my aunt was establishing her own boundaries. They unexpectedly arrived to my flat on a clear December morning, 6 months after the eviction. They were waiting outside my door after I had just returned from a 5K charity race, still wearing my running clothing. I retreated as my mother hurried forward to give me a hug. "Why are you here?" My father's voice was softer than I had heard it in years when he stated, "We've come to make amends. We've acknowledged our errors, how we exploited your kindness. We've evolved. Rita." After an awkward moment, my mother confessed that Aunt Debbie had ejected us. "We have nowhere to go. The shelters are completely packed and it's chilly outside. Rita, please remember that we are still your parents." I felt neither love nor hate as I looked at the two individuals who had given me life but stolen so much more. Just a deep feeling of disengagement. In a significant way, these weren't my parents. They were just two elderly people who had made bad decisions and were now paying the price. Calmly, I responded, "I'm not letting you live with me. Our connection is forever over that aspect. However, I will assist you one final time." After making a few calls on my phone, I gave my father a piece of paper with an address on it. "This is a center for elder living help. They may assist you in applying for senior flat subsidies and have emergency housing vouchers. I have scheduled a meeting for you for this afternoon. This will be the last time I step in." Anger twisted my mother's face. "That's all. After everything." I did interrupt. "That's all. My financial assistance ends here, but I wish you both the best." I went into my flat after unlocking the door. Farewell. I felt the last remnants of my former self, the obedient daughter who had been taught to forego her own well-being for those who offered nothing in return, disappear as I shut the door on their protests. Since then, I've finished my master's degree, gotten promoted at work, and even begun dating someone who respects my limits and encourages me to pursue my objectives. Occasionally, the family grapevine provides me with updates on my parents. After securing a senior subsidized apartment, they appeared to be acclimating to life without their human ATM. I still occasionally get a little guilty or sad about what may have been if they had been able to show true love instead of taking advantage of others. However, those times are swiftly overshadowed by pride in my hard-won independence and a resolve to never again be treated more like a resource than a person. The Renton property keeps increasing in value because to its rental revenue, which is now used to establish a retirement plan that will guarantee. I never end up in the situation my parents put themselves in. True families, whether biological or chosen, support one another rather than undermine one another, I've discovered. Above all, I've discovered that establishing limits is not selfish. It's a necessary self-preservation action. I permanently terminated the account since my parents referred to me as their personal bank. I've never made a better investment in myself. Story 3. Keep the peace and simply dismiss the accusations. My mother insisted. I decided to go with myself this time. My sister pleaded in the rain at my door 6 months later. For the most of my adult life, I, 29M, have been taking care of my 26-year-old sister Tanya. I've served as her safety net, her ATM, and her get-out-of-problems card for years. However, I never imagined that my own sister would report me to the police, saying that I had stolen her automobile. But last month, that's precisely what took place. In hindsight, I should have anticipated this. I purposefully ignored the warning indicators, which were always present and flashed like neon billboards. Tanya was always my parents' favorite kid as a child. In order to save money for college, I took part-time jobs throughout high school. When Tanya crashed her first automobile at the age of 16, everything was handed to her. Within a week, my parents got her a nicer, newer one. Instead of expecting her to put in more effort in her studies, they engaged costly tutors when she failed classes. It was an early pattern. Tanya makes errors. Everybody else repairs them. The only thing that changed as we grew up was who was supposed to clean up her mess. It wasn't simply my parents all of a sudden. I was also involved. Tanya's credit card debt became out of hand because she couldn't resist expensive outfits and weekend trips, and I was the one who paid the late penalties when she missed deadlines for college applications because she was too busy going out with friends. It was me that saved her on 3 separate occasions. My parents' catchphrase became uncomfortably recognizable. Ryan, just provide a hand to your sister one final time. Act like the larger guy. In the meantime, I was meticulously constructing my own life. I paid for college by working, obtained a respectable position in an accounting company, kept my credit score high and saved for a down payment on my modest home. I accepted responsibility for my decisions and lived within my means. However, my stability was somehow seen by my family as a duty to save Tanya from her never-ending cycle of self-harm. Tanya contacted me in tears 6 months ago because she couldn't afford to get her car fixed when it broke down. She had to go for work. She said that without dependable transport, she would lose her work. Would she be able to use my second car? Only for a week? I consented in spite of my better judgment and my girlfriend Lisa's cautions. After all, I mostly drove my newer car, so it was just sitting in my driveway most of the time. A week stretched into 2. 2 weeks stretched into a month. My progressively more insistent demands for the car's return were greeted with justifications, ignored texts, and finally plain animosity. Ryan, you're so self-centered. You own 2 vehicles. This is one that I truly need. My car had a big dent in the fender that hadn't been there before when I drove by her apartment once. She never told me about the accident or offered to cover the cost of repairs. Additionally, I later learned that she had concealed the fact that she had allowed my insurance to lapse on the car. My family had already displayed their actual selves. The lost money was found 3 Christmases ago when Tanya swiped a sizable sum from our grandmother's handbag at family dinner. In the corridor, when she thought no one was watching, I watched Tanya slide the money into the pocket of my jacket. Then, as everyone was looking, she loudly discovered it there and suggested, with tears in her eyes, that I must have taken it. Our whole extended family believed her right away. Even when my grandma tactfully hinted that there may be a misunderstanding, my complaints were written off as justifications. Ryan has always been envious of Tanya's attention. My Aunt Barbara pointedly informed her. To put a stop to the embarrassing incident, I paid back the money personally, and nobody ever expressed regret. When, months later, Tanya's inebriated confession during a family reunion revealed the truth. Tanya's potential should have been sufficiently revealed by the episode. No, it wasn't. Then came the day that made all the difference. 3 policemen entered the conference room while I was in the middle of a presentation at work. When they called for me, especially in front of my coworkers and significant clients, my boss's face went white. Regarding a car theft report that was submitted that morning, I was questioned. The report claimed that I had stolen Tanya Reed's vehicle. My vehicle's registration and title bear my name. That moment of humiliation pierced me like acid. The tight look on my boss's face and the eyes of my coworkers. Uncomfortable looks are being exchanged between clients. All of it burned into my mind. I showed them digital copies of the car, gave them my ID, and calmly explained the situation despite my racing heart. Documents stored on my cloud drive. What truly shocked me was the level of preparation Tanya had put into her deception. The police showed me paperwork, a bill of sale with my signature that I immediately recognized as forged transfer documents dated 3 months earlier, even a notarized statement claiming I had sold her the car and was now trying to take it back after a personal disagreement. The notary stamp belonged to her friend Melanie, who worked at a bank and had clearly abused her position to help Tanya with this scheme. Even more disturbing was how seriously the police took the report. One officer, Detective Wells, seemed unusually invested in the case. It wasn't until later that I learned he was dating Tanya's roommate. She had leveraged this connection to ensure the report was processed quickly, without the usual scrutiny such claims might receive. The detective had conveniently overlooked the registration discrepancies that should have raised immediate red flags. Fortunately, the other officers were more thorough and professional. After examining my evidence, they quickly realized something wasn't adding up. One of them pulled me aside after confirming my story checked out. "Look," he said, his voice low. "She filed a false police report with forged documents and tried to frame you. That serious? The notary fraud alone is a felony. If I were you, I'd press charges. And you might want to report that detective for his involvement." My phone was already lighting up with calls from my parents. I let them go to voicemail as I tried to process what had just happened. When I finally listened to their messages, I wasn't surprised by the content. They weren't calling to check if I was okay, or to express outrage at what Tanya had done. They were calling to pressure me to cover for her to tell the police. It was all a misunderstanding, that I had taken the car and returned it without telling her. She made a mistake. My mother's voice pleaded, "You know how she is. Just tell the police you took the car and brought it back. Your insurance will cover it." For the first time in my life, I found myself saying no. Not just thinking it, not just mumbling it reluctantly, but firmly stating, "No, not this time." She crossed a line. My father's response was immediate and harsh. "If you do this to your sister, don't consider yourself part of this family anymore." Those words should have devastated me. Instead, they crystallized everything I'd been feeling for years. The conditional nature of my family's love had never been so blatantly expressed. After talking with a lawyer friend about the potential consequences, I made the hardest decision of my life. I chose to bring charges against my own sister for creating a fraudulent police report, forgery, fraud, and basically grand theft auto. Since she'd failed to return my car despite several recorded requests, the evidence was overwhelming. I had text messages proving I had leased to the automobile temporarily, not giving it to her. I have texts detailing my continuous pleas for its return. I had insurance documentation confirming I was the rightful owner. The officer who collected my statement was thorough, collecting security camera footage from my office parking lot, indicating I couldn't reasonably have taken the automobile. When Tanya claimed, my coworkers, however uncomfortable becoming engaged, supplied witness statements verifying. I had been in meetings when the alleged theft happened. A forensic document expert swiftly established a falsified signature on the bill of sale. The notary, Melanie, concerned with losing her professional certification and possibly criminal penalties, soon revealed that she had notarized the paper as a favor to Tanya without my attendance. Detective Wells was placed on administrative leave, awaiting an internal inquiry regarding his handling of the case. When Tanya was jailed, my parents contacted me screaming, "How could I do this to my own blood? What type of monster was I? Didn't I comprehend that a criminal record would ruin her life?" My mother broke down in tears and said that the stress I was under was killing her. My father threatened to alter his will, to stop talking to me, and to let everyone know how spiteful I had turned into. Even though I was physically shivering after every conversation, I remained resolute throughout. Retaliation wasn't the point here. Consequences were at issue. Tanya would finally have to deal with the consequences of her own behavior without my help. Up the hopes that I would give up before the lawsuit went further, my parents molested Tanya but refused to pay for a good lawyer. They didn't comprehend my resolve. A diamond-hard determination had formed from years of bitterness. I blocked their numbers for the first time because I needed some breathing room away from their continual pressure. Tanya experienced the repercussions gradually. At first, her employer gave her the benefit of the doubt and put her on administrative leave. However, they ultimately fired her, claiming their morals clause, as the evidence grew and the unusual case received more media attention. Her landlord started the eviction procedure, which would take months to finish, because he was already annoyed by her late rent payments. Finding another savior was Tanya's initial inclination. My parents' finances were already stretched tight by bail costs, and I was no longer involved. She looked at our rich uncle. His favorite had always been her, playing the part of a devoted niece with skill. If expensive birthday cards or luxury presents were at stake, my cousin claims that when Tanya arrived to my uncle's house, she brought weeping tales of how I had set her up and how she was being persecuted, how all she needed to get back on her feet was a little assistance. At first, she was welcomed by my uncle, who even allowed her to remain in his guest home. Tanya, however, was unable to keep up the front for very long. She maxed up 2 of his credit cards in 3 weeks, pawned his wife's jewelry, and smashed his BMW while operating a vehicle without a license. Following the collision in my vehicle, her own had been suspended. After years of continuously supporting Tanya, even my uncle eventually recognized her deceit. Her legal issues grew when he not only evicted her, but also reported the stolen jewelry and credit cards to the police. An organized onslaught was launched by my extended relatives. My long-lost cousins texted me about family devotion out of the blue. My aunt, who had supported Tanya in the Christmas money dispute, called to tell me that Tanya had always admired me, and that by continuing to press the allegations, I was ruining her. She deliberately overlooked the part she played in allowing Tanya to falsely accuse me before. There are a lot of barely veiled posts about family betrayal on my social media pages. Through a common friend, I discovered that my parents were organizing an intervention, which was a well-planned plot to paint me as the antagonist without naming me. With the intention of ambushing me with relatives who would put pressure on me to withdraw the accusations, they asked me to Sunday dinner. I turned down the invitation. Rather, I sent all of the participants a group email. I've included records showing just a portion of the money I've given Tanya throughout the years. I included pictures of the fake papers she made to frame me. I described how her false charges had jeopardized my professional reputation and may have resulted in a criminal record. I questioned why none of them had spoken up for me after reminding them of the Christmas event. Next, I concluded with a straightforward assertion. Tanya has always had my support. I have repeatedly jeopardized my financial stability in order to save her. Following everything that I have done for her, she tried to get me arrested for a crime I didn't commit in order to pay me back. My decision to finally say enough is enough won't make me the villain. The family was divided by the answers. Unable to abandon the story they had constructed around Tanya as the eternal victim, some doubled down. However, several relatives quietly reached out to provide assistance, especially the younger generation who had personally observed Tanya's machinations. My cousin apologized over the phone for keeping quiet about the Christmas event. She was lying, and we all knew it. He acknowledged that it was simpler to let you bear the blame because we were so accustomed to maintaining harmony around Tanya. My mom called, sobbing uncontrollably. "Following everything that we have done for you, how do you pay us back? By ruining the lives of your sister?" I said, "No," drawing power from my silent rage at everything I had done for her. She paid me back in this way. The court case proceeded more slowly than television portrays. After being abandoned by her friend Melanie, who had taken a plea deal in exchange for testifying about the notary scam, Tanya had to face overwhelming evidence for 6 months before she eventually appeared in court. Tanya entered a guilty plea to the lowered charges. She was given a 2-year probationary period, 200 hours of community service, and full compensation for the damaged car by the judge. She would have a lasting criminal record, but no jail time. My victim impact statement was requested. It seemed unreal to stand in that courtroom and see my sister's tear-streaked face. The girl I had shielded for years now gave me a blatantly hateful stare. I talked briefly about how her actions had damaged our relationship, created professional shame, and betrayed trust. I left out the years of emotional and financial assistance. Not everything was meant for general consumption. Tanya's circumstances rapidly worsened over the following few months. Despite this most public of reckonings, she was unable to continue living the way she had before due to the combination of court costs, restitution obligations, lost income, and her tarnished image. She wore out her welcome by bouncing between friends' couches. She attempted to remain with our parents, but the frequent closeness and her growing expectations caused tension in their relationship. They even started establishing limits after allowing her to do so for 26 years. By the 8th month, her increasingly erratic behavior was a clear sign of despair. She made fictitious profiles on social media to harass Lisa, my girlfriend, and myself. She caused a disturbance at my place of employment and had to be removed by security. In what seemed to be a confused attempt to either harm me or rekindle our relationship, she even made an attempt to date one of my friends, Tyler. Tyler, who could see right through her, turned off her approaches right away and alerted me to her impending arrival. I heard a knock at my door late one wet evening, weeks after the courthouse drama. When it was opened, Tanya was drenched, and there was only one suitcase next to her. Rain or tears or both caused black streaks of makeup to run down her face. Her voice broke as she spoke. I have nowhere else to go. I was expelled by them. With my record and no work, one, am unable to locate a new place. I swear, Ryan, I've changed. Please. Your sister is me. I briefly saw the young girl who used to follow me everywhere and gaze at me with admiration before our relationship was ruined by our parents' partiality. I weakened for a second. The police officers at my place of employment, the falsified paperwork, and the careful preparation that went into framing me came back to me, though. The desperate damage control required to preserve my professional reputation, the expression on my boss's face, the innumerable nights I'd slept through, deceived by those who should have loved me the most. Family doesn't treat me the way you did. Silently, I said. I'll cover the cost of a motel stay for 3 nights. You're on your own after that. I offered, but she declined. She cursed me instead. Her fleeting vulnerability solidified into her well-known entitlement. She assured me that our parents would hold me accountable and that I would regret this. She screamed on my porch as I shut the door, and I didn't call the police until she started beating on my windows and threatening to smash them. My parents called from Tanya's phone that evening. They insisted that I be accountable for my sister. My father said the words that ultimately ended our relationship when I resisted. In that case, you are dead to us. You decided on this? No, I said, astonished by how composed I sounded. When Tanya attempted to have me arrested, she made this decision. By allowing her for 26 years, you made this decision. I'm simply at last making my own decision. I blocked that number 2 and hung up. I took a job offer in a different place 2 months later. As Tanya's responsible brother, I sold my house, gave up the majority of my belongings, and began again in a place where no one recognized me. I reduced my social media profile and updated my phone number. My maternal grandmother, who had discreetly backed my choice from the start, was the only member of my family with whom I maintained communication. And you did what you had to do, relatives who had offered their assistance. During our weekly talks, my grandma informed me that if individuals are never given the opportunity to fail, some of them would never learn. I formed a bond with my cousin that had never been conceivable before. The dynamics of the family are changing. 6 months after I moved out without you, he told me that I was the scapegoat. Additionally, Tanya is no longer receiving financial help from my uncle. Her act is beginning to be exposed. He said that Tanya had made an unsuccessful attempt to persuade Emily, their younger cousin, to allow her to move into her college flat. Having seen the consequences of my predicament, Emily adamantly declined. For the first time, a member of the younger generation confronted Tanya directly. Now a year has passed. I've started to examine the poisonous familial dynamics that ruled the most of my existence through therapy. I'm coming to realize that self-destruction shouldn't be a cost of love. I'm forming relationships with folks that appreciate me for who I am rather than what I can offer. Even now and then, I wake up with remorse and question whether I might have handled things better. But now those moments go by faster. According to my grandma, Tanya finally moved in with a partner and has been employed at retail establishments. After 3 months, she lost that job because to reported inconsistencies. And for the first time in her life, she was hired as a server. Without someone intervening to help her, she must deal with the repercussions. I still don't hear from my parents. Maybe they won't. The extended family has mostly divided into 2 groups: those who continue to accept Tanya's victim narrative and those who have started to see the poisonous tendencies that have characterized our family for many generations. After noticing similar tendencies in their own relationships, a number of cousins have sought therapy themselves. My Uncle Steve wrote me a quick but heartfelt email on my birthday, but my aunt still won't talk to me. You were correct to maintain your position. I regret not doing the same thing years ago. I have no regrets about filing charges. It was a life-changing moment when I stood up for myself and refused to be the family scapegoat once more. I lost the family I was born into, but I had the opportunity to learn what true family is all about. Unconditional, reciprocal, and supportive. Not by condoning bad behavior, but by showing love for one another in the face of both honest failures and triumphs. I often asked if I miss them. The reality is nuanced. I long for the person I intended them to be. I long for the family I never had, yet deserved. However, I don't miss having to tread carefully, spending all of my money, or compromising my dignity in order to sustain relationships based on duty rather than passion. The most vital beginnings can occasionally result from the most agonizing ends. I at last discovered who I was after losing my family. And in the end, it was worth every penny I spent